Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who action figure review. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at the brand new companions of the 3rd and 4th Doctor set. Well, bit of a mouthful. This has pretty much been available since October and are available in any B&M stores. And I just want to thank my amazing girlfriend for hunting down the sets, as I was not able to get a hold of them myself. This set, including some of the other sets that came out in July-August time, these are refreshingly new variants of figures that we got back then. And as you can tell, it's the same characters. You've got Sarah Jane Smith, Ramona I and Ramona II. So firstly, before taking a look at the figures, let's get the boring part out of the way and look at the packaging. The figures come boxed in the blue and white style guide that we've seen in previous releases, and just has some of the info change. Like, for example, it has companions of the 3rd and 4th Doctor set this time round. And on the back, you have the 3 figures that are shown in the box, which is really lovely. And as ever, you have that white background. I mean, I don't know what it's supposed to represent, but they use that on all the 3-pack figures that have been released recently. And yeah, that's pretty much it with the box. Into the bin you go. So taking these figures out of the box, these are honestly fantastic. I remember when these were originally leaked. Well, when the list got leaked, we theorised about what we could actually get. I know a lot of people predicted the 2 Romanas would either be from Power of Kroll and Horns of Nymon, as they could just easily reuse certain parts. But I didn't actually think with the Sarah Jane what they could do. I know with the Sarah Jane figure, a lot of people were hoping that we'd get the version of her from Pyramids and Mars in that white Victorian frock. However, that wasn't meant to be, and we've got this lovely figure of her from the Monster of Peladon, which is actually quite nice to have, as you can pose it with the other recent set that came out at the beginning of the year, which was the 3rd Doctor and TARDIS from that exact same story. So actually starting off with the Sarah Jane figure, this is her look as she appeared in Monster of Peladon. Now, a lot of people are a little bit disappointed with this figure, as the costume isn't exactly full-on accurate to what we saw in the story, as well as the hair being too long, as when she first appeared in the show, she had quite short hair. Now, unfortunately, this is just the same old story with all the new stuff that's coming out. It's all down to cost. So even though this head sculpt is a brand new sculpt, they obviously the budget didn't stretch to change the hair on this figure, but saying that if they did, that would have meant later releases of Sarah Jane would have just had shorter hair. So this is something that I'm not too bothered about at all. Same with the costume. I know that it's not 100% accurate to what we saw on the show. However, I think it is a nice representation, as we now actually have 2 Sarah Jane figures, one to go with the 4th Doctor, and another to go with the 3rd Doctor. So really, all in all, I'm not that bothered, to be honest, as it is a very nice figure. Looking into the detail, you know, you got the brown leather jacket and the lighter detailing on all the edges of the jacket. Now, I don't know if that's to represent a zip or anything like that. If I do recall that she did wear a zip-up leather jacket in that episode, it's got the same sort of wash all around the sides, and the jacket itself is a very nice dark brown. Another thing they have tried to attempt is actually adding the grey jumper that she would have worn underneath, and they've done this by adding a bit of grey paint underneath the jacket to represent that she's wearing something underneath. And then moving down to the trousers, they're a very nice light brown, which is also very nice. Then taking a look at the boots, they've also been painted in a creamish sort of colour, which is also interesting to say the least. I think they were a different colour in the episode, but I've not seen that story in a long time, so I honestly can't recall. Overall, I'm just quite happy that we're actually getting more classic figures of classic companions than nothing at all. I mean, yeah, they're not 100% accurate, but I'm actually quite happy with what we've got, because at least we've got something to represent what was seen in that story. And yeah, they have reused certain parts of old figures, but then it really doesn't bother me that much. If it means we're going to get new figures, then I'm happy with them using old parts to build up the figures. It means we get brand new head sculpts, and it looks fantastic, really. So now moving on to Ramona I, this was actually a surprise. Now, I didn't really think what they could actually do with making a new Ramona, as most of the parts that exist already I know some people have suggested using the Lilith figure that was from Shakespeare Code to represent her reboss operation look, but I don't think that would have worked, and it's quite a pleasant surprise that we've got this look, as they have now created a new PVC piece to create her costume that she wore in Power of Kroll. It was really nice, and I can't believe they went to the effort of actually sculpting a new piece. I can't really see much reuse value in this, as this only resembles what Ramona would have wore in Power of Kroll. So there's not really much use for it now after this figure's been released. So who knows, maybe in later years they might re-release this figure and repackage it with a Tom Baker. The main body that was used to make up this figure is actually a Sarah Jane Adventures figure. This actually works rather well and replaced the dress Insomnia with the new PVC jacket. Moving up to the head itself has vastly improved from the original release, and I would say this is actually a better likeness to Mary Tam. I don't know what it is, but I think it's something to do with the paint apps that they've done on this new version, as it just looks more like her than the previous release with the very huge forehead that they gave her. But this time around, the paint looks a lot crisper. The slightly raised eyebrow is just very, very on point, and it's just a better head sculpt overall, in my opinion. Taking a look at the hair sculpt, it is again absolutely fantastic, and all the details and the black wash over the top makes those details stand out even more. It's very lovely and does represent what her hair looked like in the show as well. And as I've said before, the hair has been lowered down ever so slightly, which looks a lot better than the previous release, which gave her that really big forehead. It didn't really look that good in my opinion, so I'm glad that the change here has been made, as this has to be now my favourite version of Ramona 1. I mean, I know we've only got 2 releases, but I think out of the 2, this one just stands out a little bit more, so I think because of just that change, I really prefer the figure. So now moving down to the body, the midsection has been cast in this red block PVC piece, and it has quite a lot of detail in it with the shoulder section and the belt and even a little zip that goes up the front. It's not really that vibrant, but I think really looking at it, if they made it any brighter, it would stand out too much and it would just look awful. And the rest of her body is just a simple black paint job all around the legs and the arms, and on her wrist, which has a little sculpt of a watch, which has also been painted in the same black colour. Again, she didn't really wear a watch in that story. This is actually taken from the Sarah Jane figure from the Sarah Jane Adventures sets, but the body works here rather well, and it just looks really nice that they've actually painted the watch on. And then moving down to the legs, they are from the Sarah Jane Smith figure again, but they do work here, as she did wear sort of riding boots in that story. Yes, they're not exactly accurate, but they do work well enough here, and I'm happy that we've actually got another variant of this figure. So there we go. We've pretty much, in the space of 1 year, we've actually got 2 new figures from season 16, as we didn't have anything from that season at all, and now we finally have something to put on the shelf from that season, which is rather nice. I always thought it would be kind of cool if they did like the 4th Doctor with his brown coat, a Ramona 1 figure, and a K9, as well as the Tracer from the Key to Time series. It would have been quite nice, but we didn't unfortunately get that. But finally, we have got something to resemble that, and it looks rather nice. So moving on to the final figure, it is Ramona II from the Horns of Nyman. Now, I kind of guess that this was probably going to be the most likely figure to be produced after seeing the Destiny one, only because it's pretty simple and the body itself can just be reused to make this figure. You just take the scarf off and you've essentially got the figure itself. It's just been painted differently. As before, the head sculpt is absolutely fantastic. You can tell it's supposed to be Lalla Ward. On my one, I don't think the paint apps on this one is as good as the first one. I do think a little bit of detail has been lost in the paint apps, but not to say that this isn't a terrible figure at all, and it might just depend on what figure you get. Some of them can be fantastic, other times they can be absolute train wrecks, like they have done in the past. But it's not so bad, and it's only like a minor nitpick anyhow. But still, the paint apps here are still rather nice. The hair sculpt is really, really beautiful, with the blonde base colour and the darker wash over the top extenuates the detail in the hair. And then the face sculpt itself is again really lovely. You can tell it's Lalla Ward, and I just think it's a really nice sculpt. Next, we move down to the coat, which is the same Sarah Jane coat that was used on the previous figure, but this time around it's cast in this beautiful vibrant red. Now, just like the previous one, they have used paint apps to accentuate some of the details that were seen on the on-screen costume, such as the buttons on the front. Again, I think it works rather well. They did this on the previous one with all the other details, but it's done less here as the coat itself didn't have that much detailing. And I still think it's an absolutely gorgeous colour. And again, I know there's some certain details on there that shouldn't be on there, such as the cuffs and the belt on the back. You know, you've got to think to yourself, would you really want this or no figure at all? Because we're living in a world now where this is all we're going to be able to get for now. And I'm quite happy with it, to be honest. Looking underneath the jacket, you get to see the detail that has been painted on to represent her waistcoat and shirt, and I think this is really nice. The paint apps on here are very nice and crisp, and it does represent what Lala War would have worn in that episode. And this is something they didn't really have to bother with, but it's really nice that they've paid that much attention to detail. And then moving down to the legs, the trousers themselves have been painted in this beigey cream colour, which is very nice, and the boots themselves have been painted in a gloss black. And then finally, taking a look at her hands, she is wearing red gloves that she would have worn in the story The Horns of Naiman. And again, they look really nice as well, and I'm surprised they actually paid that much attention to detail. But overall, this is a very nice version of Ramona. So if you did miss out on the first set, this is probably something that I do recommend you try and pick up. So moving on to articulation, all three figures pretty much share the same articulation. The head can move from side to side, the arms can do a full 360, the biceps can also swivel a full 360, the wrists can do a full 360, and then moving down to the waist can do a full 360 turn, the legs can move forward and out to the side, and then the legs can also do a full 360 as well as bending at the knee. Overall, I think this set is honestly a really good set to collect. It's a very nice collector's set to put on the shelf alongside the other Romanas and Sarah Jane figure that we got back in the summer of 2020. And it's amazing to think that at the beginning of that year, we didn't have any young Sarah Janes, we didn't have any Romana figures at all, and we ended up leaving the end of the year with two sets dedicated to those characters. And I would say this to anyone who did sort of nitpick or wasn't too happy that they reused old body parts to create these figures. I honestly think if it works, then good. I mean, go. I'm honestly lost for words to think that these now actually exist in the collection. Yes, they might not be bang on accurate to what we saw, but considering that the first Romana 1 figure that we got in the summer of 2020 didn't look anything like her costume at all to what we got in the second set is a massive improvement. So thinking about it, if more money's being poured in to make these figures because the fans want them, then I think it's a brilliant idea, because it means we might end up getting more accurate figures later down the line. But I mean, who knows? We might be getting more classic companions, which would be honestly amazing. And I really can't wait to see what B&M produce next. This is pretty much it for this video now. I'm going to wrap this up. And thank you for watching. And the next review is going to be Family Unit set from 1975. Until then, see you soon.